Hello everyone, I'm Naveen Agarwal and I want to welcome you to my weekly video update. We have some wonderful news to share and celebrate. FDA has authorized for emergency use the very first vaccine for COVID-19. This vaccine comes from Pfizer-BioNTec and it has already received emergency authorization in the UK and Canada. So this is great news and a wonderful milestone in our fight against COVID-19. Now, this vaccine was developed in record time. It was manufactured even before the regulatory process took place. And the regulatory review also was conducted at lightning speed. So, on one hand, it's a great example of our can-do innovative spirit, but at the same time, it leaves a lot of questions and concerns in the public mind. So my intent behind this video is to give you some information, a little bit more than what you might hear in the news media, so that you can make an informed decision for yourself and your loved ones. Because you see, for this to work, we will all have to take a little bit of risk. We'll have to collectively make this decision and choice to receive this vaccine willingly, so that we can fight this battle against COVID-19. In this particular video, I will talk about three key questions. The first one is, what is the basic technology behind this vaccine? How does it work? And how do we know it is working the way it's supposed to work? That's a basic science question. Let's understand that first. The second question is about how long is this effect supposed to last? Because we want to know how long will we have this so-called immunity to COVID-19 after we receive this vaccine. Then I want to talk about a summary of safety and efficacy data that really prompted FDA to give this authorization. And finally, I want to discuss with you some key questions and concerns that still remain unanswered, and we should be looking for more information on those particular questions and concerns in the future. This will allow us to collectively be more informed. And this is the perspective I have in this particular video, one of an informed patient. Okay, so let's talk about the first question. How does it work? This vaccine is based on what they call mRNA or messenger RNA technology. Messenger RNA are already used in our body for day-to-day functioning because they prompt our cells to produce specific proteins for all kinds of functions. In this particular case, the researchers have designed an RNA molecule with a specific instruction, a message, coded in this RNA that will prompt our cells to produce what they call the spike protein for coronavirus 2. This spike protein is that spiky protein on the viral particle. You might have seen a picture of that. And that spike protein is a very key target because that allows the virus to attach to a cell wall through these receptors and then finally find its way inside the cells where it creates all kinds of havoc. So it's a key target, and it has been shown to work in the past that if you block that pathway, and that's how some of the monoclonal antibodies are working right now as a treatment option. So this vaccine is designed to stimulate the production of spike protein by our own cells. I find that fascinating. Because the idea is that once the spike protein is produced by our cells, our own immune system will respond to it and create these neutralizing antibodies, which is what they are measuring to show it's working. And there are special assays designed for neutralizing antibodies now. And they have shown that based on the amount of dose and the number of doses, the immune response in terms of this neutralizing antibodies can be seen. It's very robust. And that's how they landed at 2 doses, 3 weeks apart, and a 30 microgram dose level. Because they wanted to have a very robust, sufficient response, especially among older people, which is the high risk group. So they were able to show through the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trial studies that they are able to see this robust immune response. They also measured other types of immune response, especially from T cells, which is more immediate. When this substance is present on our cell walls, the system responds immediately. And that is what leads to cytokines in our system. and they were able to measure different kinds of T cell mediated response as well. So they know really confidently that this vaccine is working the way it's supposed to work. Question number 2, how long does it last? So for that, they did a very clever thing. They compared the level of these neutralizing antibodies with the level of neutralizing antibodies in convalescent plasma collected from patients who had recovered from COVID-19. So the idea is, let's see over a period of time, what is the level of these neutralizing antibodies among the people who receive this experimental vaccine, and how does it compare with people who have recovered from COVID-19 in their convalescent plasma. And they were able to show that up to 50 days after dose 1, the two levels are pretty comparable to each other. So right now the conclusion is that at least up to 50 days, we will have a pretty sufficiently high level of neutralizing antibodies in our system. They will continue to study this, and more data will become available in the future. Number 3, let's talk about now the safety and efficacy data that the FDA looked. Now, they have published a lot of information after this decision. The report is close to 100-page long, and I reviewed that. I want to just give you a highlight of that report. So in terms of efficacy, it comes from the phase 3 trial that had 44,000 subjects, up to 44,000 subjects, 1-to-1 split, random split between placebo and vaccination group. So what they are finding when you have heard 95% efficacy is that it corresponds to their primary endpoint. The primary endpoint was, we want to look at people who did not have any prior evidence of COVID-19 before or during the vaccine administration, and up to at least 7 days after dose 2. So it was a long period of time in which they should not have had any evidence of COVID-19. That was the endpoint. And if you look at that, a lot of other subjects were excluded from that calculation because they didn't meet this criteria. And based on that, still a pretty high number, based on that, they found 8 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the vaccine group and 162 in the placebo group. That gave them a 95% vaccine efficacy. But if you look at the overall data, there were 50 cases of COVID-19 in the vaccine group and 275 in the placebo group. Still a pretty big difference, about 82% vaccine efficacy. Very high. But I want us to pay attention to those details and the nuances in the data so we can understand what the data means and what it doesn't mean, more importantly. So this was done in a very controlled way, very specific calculations based on very specific conditions. So efficacy is pretty high, and the level of confidence is also very high because the number of people that they have studied is very, very high. Okay. In terms of the safety data, it comes from 2 different types of data sets. The first one is fairly short term, up to 7 days of observation time after each dose 1 and dose 2. The subjects were asked to keep a diary and record every condition, this adverse condition that they faced, and that data was compiled. Now, the slightly longer term data is a 1 month and a 2 month follow-up after the vaccine, after dose 2 of the vaccine. In that case, also there's a fair amount of information available. Okay, so in the short term, the 7-day observation period, the most frequent complaint was injection site pain, which is really not uncommon when you receive a vaccine. Redness, swelling, those type of complaints were reported. There were systemic issues like fatigue, which was the most common complaint, fever, chills, muscle pain. So they were reported at different frequency and severity. Most were mild to moderate severity conditions. So overall, there were no huge red flags. This is something you would expect from a simple reaction to the vaccine at the local site, and also some systemic issues. Now let's talk about the 1 month and 2 month data, because that's where there are some unanswered questions and concerns in my mind. First of all, I want to focus only on the 2 month follow-up data, close to about 10,000 subjects in each group, placebo versus the vaccine group. And in the vaccine group, they are showing about at least 20%, one in 5, after 2 months reported at least one event. Some event was reported. But what's more important to me is that the serious events were reported by about 1% of the people who received the vaccine in the vaccine group. And about 0.1%, 0.1% had life-threatening serious events. Now, this number may look small, but when you multiply it by potentially hundreds of millions of people who would receive this vaccine, the absolute number may still be pretty high. Now, that's not to say these serious events or life-threatening events were necessarily caused by the vaccine. They are just associated with it. And so far, they are claiming that this incidence or a frequency is not too different than what you might expect in the general population, which I'm not sure if that is entirely accurate. But that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so that's as far as the long-term data is. Now, some of the serious life-threatening, let me give you an example. Appendicitis, heart attack, or stroke. FDA found these events to be numerically imbalanced in the vaccine group versus the placebo group. So there's slightly small numbers, but slightly higher frequency, slightly higher imbalance. So there is something going on that we will still continue to pay attention to that. This is not a huge, enormous red flag, and that's exactly why it is an emergency use authorization. It is not a blanket approval that it will be available everywhere to everybody without any other concern. So it will be highly controlled. It's an emergency use authorization. So moving forward, that's where I want to talk about what you can expect is there'll be more data coming. The plan is 6 months post dose 2, there'll be another report, and up to 2 years of follow-up will be done for serious adverse events, including death. So we'll have this information available in the near future, and I will be waiting to review that to really understand the risk. Certainly the 1.1% of serious adverse event frequency and 0.1% of life-threatening adverse event frequency in my mind is still pretty high. So that is why it is a benefit risk calculation. If you are at a very high risk of exposure, let's say you're a healthcare worker, the benefit is still considerably high for you to take this vaccine and protect yourself against this. So it'll be a benefit risk based decision, and I hope all of us can make the right choice as more and more information becomes available in the coming days or months. So I hope this is useful. We went through a lot. There's a lot of information, and in future I will be making more videos to dig more into detail as more data becomes available. But in the meantime, let me know if you have any questions or comments or concerns. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts and feelings? What questions are top of mind for you? Drop me a comment here or follow me on LinkedIn, send me an email through my website. I want to thank you for your interest and attention, and I hope all of you are staying safe in these very, very difficult circumstances.